Hi, everyone, and welcome to the In-Depth Genealogist Chit Chat Live. Today is going to be all about the August roundup of our panelists. We last got together at the beginning of the summer to talk about and give you all tips and tricks to doing research or on-site research or going on heritage trips or something for your summer related to genealogy. And so we're all back to give you a quick roundup of a couple of the things that we've found in our treks this summer. So I would like to introduce the first person to give us some exciting findings, and that's Jennifer Alford, and she's the editor of the In-Depth Genealogist Going In-Depth digital magazine. That's a long stint to say. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Val. Thanks for having me. It's been a while.
I know, too long. So let's hear about your roundup for August.
Sure. Well, I was fortunate to be invited to be a speaker up in my hometown, South Bend, Indiana. And so while I was there, I just knew I had to find some time to do some genealogy research because I was going to be right there. And of course, I spent some quality time with family, and I also did my presentation, which was on getting started with Jewish genealogy research, and had a great group, had a great time. And the whole time I'm going, okay, what am I going to do with this little chunk of time that I have available to do research? And so I debated and debated. I was like, well, I have, relatives from Michigan City, which is about an hour away. I have research to do right in South Bend. I basically ended up making a list of, if I had all the time I wanted, these are all the things I would do. So I had newspaper obits I wanted to look up. I had vital records I wanted to request. I had cemetery headstones I wanted to find. When I looked at the list, most of what I wanted to do was in Michigan City, which was an hour away. So already I knew that was going to eat up some of my time. And I hemmed and hawed and finally decided, hey, I'm only up here maybe twice a year, so I'm just going to go for it. So I drove to Michigan City, and it's an hour earlier there. It's on Central Time. So I gained an hour. Yay! So I get there.
And it helps driving 100 miles an hour down the interstate to get there.
Well, I really couldn't do that. I was in my Mini Cooper, so I always feel a little nervous about that with the highway driving. So I was driving the speed limit, but I got to Michigan City, and I had planned ahead. So once I decided on Michigan City, I took the time to really get more detail. So first on my list, I needed to fill out some forms for some vital records. So I printed off the forms. Actually, back at home, I had done this just in case, and went through my list of, okay, who am I still missing? Trying to fill in as much information as I could on the forms. So that was my first stop. I stopped at the Michigan City Health Department and gave them my forms, and they were super busy, so they're like, we're gonna have to get back with you. And I was like, okay, that's fine, I'm going to the library. So I dropped those off. They said, we'll give you a call and let you know what we find or what we don't find. And so I went off to the library, which was a few blocks away. So it was like, everything was right there. It was so nice. So I get to the library, and the Michigan City Library there in Indiana, they have an online database. So you can actually plug in your ancestor's name. So I plugged in the surnames I was interested in, and it told me which paper, which issue of the paper, and what page and what column all of these obituaries should be on. So I go in there and I gather up. I had 4 different ones that I was interested in. And the first one I pulled up wasn't actually the obituary for the person I was looking for. It was actually a story about how her house had been robbed while her funeral was going on. It says, the dead robbed. So I was like, that's interesting. So I went back and looked at previous issues to see if I could find the obituary. Finally did, and it was just chock full of great stuff. And what was really interesting is it talked about how this was the third visit from the Silent Reaper, and that Mrs. Nolan was the third death in the family within a few months. So, of course, as I read through, I picked up the dates of the other people who had died, went back and found those issues, and got copies of all those. And one of her sons, oh my gosh, he worked for the electric company and died by being electrocuted in a freak accident. Yeah, so that was kind of a nasty story to find. So I found that. I found a couple other family members that were related that were all ones I had planned on looking up. And I found my third great grandfather's obituary, which was very interesting. So I was like so hyper just from that, because I recently found, had connected through Ancestry DNA with a cousin who was also interested in this particular line. And we share the third great grandparents. And she was wondering what happened to her second great grandfather. And so we're connected on this third great grandparent line. And I found this obituary for our third great grandmother. So of course I'm like, woohoo, this is so exciting. And so I take a picture and I send it through a Facebook Messenger and let her know. And, you know, it's really neat when you connect with someone through a DNA, because especially if they're also interested in genealogy, it's like you have like a research partner. And I really haven't had much of that. So it's been really fun getting to know her, and, you know, we share theories of what we think happened to different people and share our finds and all that. So it was really kind of like, man, this day's going great. On to the next stop. And so then I went to the cemetery, and I had a list, let's see, of about 9 people I was hoping to find their headstones. My expectations were I would be lucky to find like 3 of them, you know, maybe half if I got lucky. Well, so I get there, and I didn't know what sections they were in, but it was a huge cemetery. And I really, like I said, I had low expectations. Well, they were watching out for me because I found all of them. And particularly exciting was my 3 times great grandfather, who I'm wandering around this area and just wandered right over to his grave. And it was flat with the ground. There's no way I would have noticed it if they hadn't pushed me in the right direction. It was amazing.
They come calling to you. I swear they do.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And, you know, I'm a bit of a sap. So, of course, I went and I visited my great-grandfather, Meyer Krieger, who is like, he's the puzzle in my family. He's the one I'm always trying to figure out more about on his side of the family. So I visited his headstone, and I told him all about, you know, what I'd done that weekend, because I spent it with a cousin on that side, and how wonderful they are, and that, you know, he set a great ground for his family, that his children all turned out wonderful and their descendants are wonderful. And it just was like, it felt so good and cathartic, you know, just to tell him that, even though who knows if he was listening or not. It just felt good for me to say it. So after that, I was just like, this was an awesome trip. I have so many new leads to go from these newspaper articles. And even though I still had like a 7-hour drive home, I didn't care. It was just a great time. Oh my
gosh, it brings tears to my eyes of joy.
Yeah, yes, you know. It was just wonderful. And, you know, it was just a great way to spend just about 4 hours. Managing to pack all of that in that short amount of time was just unbelievable to me. Cool. It was awesome. Yay. So now I'd like to hear, and hopefully no one feels like the pressure on to have a great story. But now I want to hear from Dustin Austin, who's also here in Ohio, what he's been up to this summer.
Well, I have been on nothing major as far as trips go, but I have been planning a couple trips. I enjoy getting groups of people together, especially when it comes to going to either one Fort Wayne, which, as you know, Jen, is it's less than 3 hours away for us, or traveling to Salt Lake City, and both are on my target. So next weekend, there's a group of us going to Fort Wayne, so we've been planning that out. And so that's been kind of on the priority list. Also working on a cemetery project where back in 2013, I went down to the cemetery, which is north from my house, the Catholic cemetery down here, and I went into the office, and the office manager is actually my next door neighbor. So I said to her, I go, "Hey, I need the cemetery map," and she's like, "Well, what do you want that for?" I said, "I'm trying to find someone down here." And she goes, "Well, you don't want it." And I said, "Well, why not?" And she said, "Well, I'll show it to you." So she goes in this old closet. They put a vault inside the closet of the old church rectory, and she pulls out this map, and almost all the spaces on it just say vacant, vacant, vacant. And I'm like, "Well, this is a heck of a map, I tell you." So I said, we gotta figure this out. So I said, "Well, let me borrow it." So I went and had it copied, and I brought it back to her, and it of course wasn't much help. So I went on the hunt to redoing this map, and I trusted in my good cousin and friend Denise to help with the project. So we're trying to finish that up, and basically what we did was we had to, from all the Catholic parishes in my area are all part of the Toledo Catholic Diocese. And so we had to request all the records from the Catholic Diocese. So I entrusted one of the priests down here to help me out. And we got all the records, and it took us quite a while. We had to go through every record from the beginning of the books and transcribe all of the German and Latin names and dates and everything. So we transcribed them. And I feel like Val when it comes to notes. So we have this.
Here comes the page of the reams.
So here's the big ream of paper of all the stuff that was transcribed, and you can't really see it, but it's real tiny lettering all the way down through all these pages. And so that's been quite a task in itself. And so we're basically recreating the cemetery map. And so in conjunction with this, Denise wanted to step it into overdrive, and Denise thought it would be a fantastic idea to create a family tree for every single person buried in the cemetery. So that has been a monumental task in itself. So we're trying to finish that up, and which has been very interesting, as most of you probably know, in these little tiny farming communities where I live, everyone's related to each other, it seems like, or almost everyone is. So that's actually very interesting to work on all this. And so that's been on the radar. And then my biggest project, which has been the most fun, has been helping adoptees find their families. And so that's been on my radar for quite a few months. And I just finished my third one this past Sunday was a week that had passed since I helped her. And that's been a great joy to help see these families reconnect. And as Mary was talking in the green room, you know, the most cool part is when you finally make that connection. It's that one little piece, and then all of a sudden, within a day or two, the families are connecting, they're talking to each other, and I would say in my experience, 70% of the time, it's pretty much always a good thing. You know, families are like, "Oh my gosh, I've always wondered what happened to you." So far out of the three of them, one parent has not wanted any contact. I think she just needs more time. She wasn't expecting it, of course. But all the other ones have been good. So.
Oh my gosh, you guys are killing me with the tears of joy. That is so cool. Oh, and the church or the cemetery. Of course, cemetery is near and dear to my heart. Having done the big, huge one in Colorado Springs, I can understand the reams of paper and printer ink you're going through.
Yeah, and you know the biggest hurdle has been with getting the records, because what had happened was the diocese came in one day, this has been quite a few years ago, and they took all the parish books and they took them up to Toledo. So even the office personnel can't even access them. So I had to get special permission from the priest, and the priest request that the sister up at the diocese actually send me the records, and so that's what we've been using to work on. So it was a challenge to get them, but they're a great resource, and now they're online. So if anyone has any ancestors in the Toledo Diocese of Ohio, they are online on Family Search. So that's pretty
Sorry,
much.
my mic was muted. I gotta mute myself, or else I'd be doing all kinds of crying on camera. Anyway, then are you donating a copy of it to like the local library, the state library, of course, to maybe the churches, or what locations have you thought of, to donate the information, or just leaving it online?
Well, right now, once the some of the records that we were able to get actually cannot be put online for privacy reasons, so those actually will get shipped back to the diocese. There's nothing personal, and I'm like, there's no, I don't have any of the real new, baptisms that show like birth dates. I don't have any of that stuff, but there's some newer deaths and stuff that they didn't want published. But as far as everything else goes, and where we're going to be putting it, once it's all done, once the map's complete, that we'll make probably 2 copies, and we'll keep it with one of the local libraries, and then one will obviously go to the church. And then as far as the family history book with all these family genealogies in them, we haven't really decided what to do with that, because there are some younger people, and by younger I'm saying under 60 years old. There's some, I'm going to actually 80, anyone under 80. There's still quite a few of them that are being included in with that, and we actually don't want to publish that. So that's kind of a gray area as far as what we're going to do with that, and how we're going to retract all of those, or redact all of those private names.
That's why I brought it up, because so many people not involved in a project like this. I understand it from this, doing my big, huge cemetery project. You have to be really careful, and people needed to know that. But what a wonderful project. And we got to encourage more people to get involved. I don't know that I would go into doing the genealogy of all the people. I commend you for that, Dustin.
Well, that was not my idea. That was Denise's. I've just put a little legwork in part of that. So I will give all that credit to Denise, because she, like I said, she's the one that wanted to kind of kick that in high gear. So that's pretty much been what I've been working on. So now I think it'd be great to hear from Mary Kircher-Roddy from Seattle, Washington.
Thanks, Dustin. Boy, I want to ask you, now that you've done your Toledo stuff, could you go to London, Ohio, please? There's a Catholic cemetery there that I really need done, please, and all the family bios too.
Okay.
Okay. Well, mine, I have not traveled yet. I am going to California next week, and hopefully I will get to do some genealogy research when I'm there. But my really exciting thing recently was, I'm in the midst of ProGen, and our assignment for last month and this month is to do a proof argument. And so I had one family I was going to do, and then I started looking at it and think, I don't have really enough, so I'll pick this other one. And I've been talking about this for a long time, and had these things proved in my head, of course, but never on paper. And that's the last part of the genealogical proof standard. You have to write it down. And so I decided to write it down. And that whole process of writing it down, I realized that, I had these civil marriage records from England, but these were Catholic people. There should be parish records. And the civil record had my great-great-grandmother's sister, her only the father's name. It only said Henry Graham. And I'm thinking, that Catholic record ought to have both parents' names on it. So I contacted the church, and they said, we don't have those. We sent them to, after a period of time, to the Durham City Archives. So I contacted Durham City Archives, and they said, yeah, we have those. And I wanted a marriage record and a baptismal record. So I sent them my, I don't know, 5 pounds a piece, I think, or 7 pounds, whatever it might have been, to get those records. And they sent me the baptismal one, and then they said, but we can't find the marriage record for the parents. And maybe they weren't married by a priest. Well, I had the civil record, and the officiant who had signed the marriage certificate for the civil area was the same priest who had done the baptismal thing. So it's like, I know it was a priest. So I emailed, sent this Durham Archives a copy of the civil marriage record that I had, and they said, oh, okay. And then they realized that there was some confusion about the which church it was. And so they were willing to go look in this other register, and they found it. Unfortunately, the priest didn't really think it was important to write the mother's maiden name, so I just got her first name. But once I saw that, then I started looking and found it on Family Search. And it was a better copy. So I kind of wasted my money on Durham, except I never would have known this information about the church. So at the end of the day, it really was worth it. And so I had this couple and their oldest son, and then I thought, okay, now that I know where the records are, I'm going to see if I could find their daughter. And, you know, the records in the U.S. said she was born in 1861. And I found, no, she was really born in 1857, so never trust a lady's age. And so I found her baptismal record. And since I thought she was born in 1861, I knew her dad couldn't have died until she was conceived. But when she was born in 1857, I found her father's death record in 1856. And then when I knew I was looking for, now he's passed away, and I'm not looking for a family of 4 anymore. I'm looking for a widow with 2 children. And sure enough, I found her in the 1861 census. And I was so excited to find that. And then even more when I turned the page, because it's her same surname as the next, he's living with her. He's in the next, it's probably her brother or her uncle. And so now I've got a lot of parishes to look for in Ireland, but they're all centered around one little place instead of across the entire 6 provinces of Northern Ireland. So, or six counties. So I'm pretty close now, I think, to actually being able to find my great-great-great-grandparents. And it's all from writing it down. So write it down.
Oh, that's awesome. And see, if you hadn't done that, you would still not have. And it's funny how, I think that they were leading you, just like Jennifer's great-grandmother leading her right there, is they were leading you when you were making that decision of which family was I going to pick for this assignment.
Right. Yeah. And you know, I've got my great-great-grandmother's picture on the wall, and sometimes I curse at her. Sometimes I plead, tell me something, please, please. And I think she was trying to tell me something in this instance. So it's totally worth it to write it down. It just will get your head processing information in a different way. All right, well, let's see what Melissa has got to tell us. This is Melissa Barker from Houston County, Tennessee.
You're muted, darling.
Yeah, my cursor wouldn't unmute me. Thank you, Marion. I just love to hear your stories. Your blogs are fantastic. And it's great to hear everyone's stories, because as an archivist, it's just wonderful to hear you all talk about all the different repositories that you're going to and the research that you're doing. And so that's just awesome. I have not been traveling because I've been working deep in the archives in Houston County, which is in the basement of the courthouse. So it's really down in the basement. But I actually I was able to send away for some Union pension records, Civil War Union pension records, for my husband's 3rd great-grandfather. His name is Jesse Glasgow. And I had not worked on him in a long time. And so when I was a newbie genealogist, I knew that he had enlisted with an Illinois Union regiment, although he lived here in Tennessee. And I always thought, well, why would he go all the way to Illinois to enlist? Well, when you start to learn genealogy and you learn how to do this research, I find out that the Illinois regiment actually was at the Battle of Fort Donelson, which is just down the road from me. And that's when he enlisted. I guess he waited for a Union regiment to come to him. And so he enlisted, and then he was transferred actually to another regiment because enough men had died of wounds or sickness or whatever, that their regiment was so small that they transferred to another unit. So I got his Union pension file. It was 100 pages. I'm still processing the information. He was asking for money because he said he contracted a disease of the hand, which in some of the pages it says cancer of the hand. He lost his eyesight, his hearing, and he had piles. So this man had it all. And so that's what he was getting his pension for. Now, I always didn't know.
Well,
yeah, Val.
Question, what's piles?
I understand piles to be a severe case of hemorrhoids. It's pretty bad. And so I had always known that he died in March of 1892. Could never find the exact day when he died. He just died of a last will and testament. His probate records, his inventory and things never mentions exactly when he dies. The year before he died, he became the guardian of his grandchildren, the Harris children. And because his daughter had died years before and his son-in-law had just died. His name was Notley Harris. And so he became the guardian of his grandchildren, which I found the guardian records. I did notice in the guardian records that all of a sudden the guardianship changed to Jesse Glasgow's son, William Glasgow, and there was no explanation as to why, but it was after Jesse's year of death. So I figured he died, so it went to the son. I also noticed that Notley Harris had filed also for a Union pension, and Jesse Glasgow was listed as guardian on the pension. That pension file too, which is about 50 pages. As I was reading through his pension file, lo and behold, there it was. Jesse Glasgow died March 29th, 1892. And it's listed, of course, in the pension file because that had to be documented, and then the new guardian had to be documented. And so that was a fantastic find because I've been looking for his exact death date for 27 years. And so it's a fascinating. If you don't get pension files, whoever you are that's listening, if you don't get pension files, I would highly encourage you to get them because it's got some of the most fascinating information in them. So, but I still continue to work in the Houston County, Tennessee archives. I'm fixing to start processing some Houston County Board of Education records. And I will lastly leave you with a little bit of a mystery I was telling the other participants in the green room. Late this afternoon at about 4 o'clock, I was thumbing through some of the records. There were some affidavits for some teachers where they were going to, it's an affidavit stating what they get paid per month. It was for a program from the state of Tennessee. And so they had to sign these affidavits. Well, I noticed that one of the teachers actually signed with an X mark, and you could tell that the superintendent who signed at the bottom of the page had actually signed her name. And so now all afternoon and evening I've been thinking, okay, this is a school teacher. Why would she put an X of her mark and not sign? Because this was in 1934. And so school teachers surely had to be able to read and write. But something to think about. So I will do some more investigation on that and see what I can come up with. So back to you, Val. What have you been up to?
Oh, nothing. You got to let us know about that teacher, and it just light bulb came on because starting with my mom-in-law and other people in my genealogy, I've got teachers. So you gave me, and I've looked up teacher records, but that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look for Board of Education records, and these Board of Education records, I'll just one more thing. I'm so excited about these records because many of us who are genealogists know that before consolidation happened in the 1960s, when they consolidated schools, integrated schools, there was all these one room schoolhouses that were seemingly in every little bitty community within a county, within a state. So we had in our little county over 60 schools, and we have a very small county. So you can imagine these are all little one room. And so they would do this because they didn't want to, they couldn't travel to schools far away. So it was near their homes. And so with these particular records, I'm going to be able to document all of our little one room schoolhouses. And I get a lot of phone calls and emails from people saying, my ancestor went to this school. Do you have any information? And I've always had to say, no, I'm sorry. But since the school board now has handed over, it's been transferred to the archives, these older, they date from 1895 up to like 1950. And so I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh. We won't hear from you for days, weeks. Oh, that's cool. Oh, you all have such awesome stories. And yes, you brought tears to my eyes. I'm going to screen share because I want to show, I talk in pictures as well. But there's been so many things that I've done. We could be here for months on this August roundup to tell you, but I chose to share one of the places where I went to earlier this summer. Val's Roots Professional Genealogy Services on Wheels went to her satellite office in Kansas. And while I was there, I thought, well, I have some time to go do some client research. And this is a picture of the Midwest Genealogy Center in Independence, Missouri. And it is an amazing building, as you can see. The collection is very large. I think at one point they kind of have a competition between the Allen County Public Library and genealogy collection and Midwest Genealogy Center and Denver Public Library to see who's got the biggest collection. But if you are ever going through the Midwest, you definitely want to make this a stop. Now, mind you, I was doing some client work, and that's fine, but I had some time to do my own. And so one of the gems that I found was a book that it was published in 2005. Well, I wasn't working on my mom's biological side of the family back then, but now I am. And lo and behold, you know of the series, the Germans to America, or Italians to America, or the Famine Immigrants to America series. Well, this series is the Migration from the Russian Empire, and by P. William Philby, and I think also Ira Glacia. But anyway, they go through the passenger lists and pull out just those passengers from the Russian Empire. And this gem had my great-grandfather and grandmother and I want to say her parents in this book. So that was pretty cool, and it confirmed what I had already found in a different resource. And then the other item I want to show you is this. Here I am in Independence, Missouri. I thought, well, let's just see what they have on South Dakota and North Dakota, since, my newly found biological grandmother was born in Presho, South Dakota. Oh my gosh, the goosebumps. This book that's on a shelf in a library in Missouri talks about Presho, South Dakota. This whole book talks about various counties, but it's of rails and trails. So if you've got South Dakota research, this is a gem. And I believe I copied 6 or 8 pages just about Presho. Go figure. So yeah, you never know what you're going to find where, and you never know what library is going to have. And this Midwest Genealogy Center, their collection for items from all over the United States is incredible. So before you go, though, I highly recommend, like you would do on to go to any library, is check their card catalog, which I had done the day before, but I didn't know what was going to be in this book. I just had the title and the author and the call number. So
So
that was
Val,
my fine. Yes.
as a professional genealogist, I always love to hear, well, anyone for that matter. I'm sorry, I don't want me to specify. But when you're preparing for one of these trips like you just went on, what do you find most helpful in preparing? You know, what do I want to look at? What do I want to look for? What is a tip from you for that?
Well, as a professional and as for my own research, and I had already done this on my laptop, I keep my electronic version, my Excel spreadsheet that I took it was actually a form that I got many years ago, and instead of handwriting it, I now have it on my laptop and my desktop to take with me. And I used it that says where I'm going to be at, what like in this case, the book titles, the author, the call number, where I'm going to be at, and I make that list. And then I also print. I'm a hard copy person. I hard copy printed each of these items that I wanted to look at, both for here's my set for the client that day, and then here's what I wanted to look at for my own research that day. And I got there, I knew I was going to be there from 11 o'clock in the morning until they kicked me out at 9 p.m. So I make a list, and what I also, why I like the printouts versus digital of the card catalog is then I can shuffle them around and prioritize them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do, even up to the minute when I sit down. I know exactly, before I even get there, I know exactly what I'm going to look at first. But I keep an open mind thinking, well, what will that give me that will lead me elsewhere? Or, go on to the next item that I've chosen. So you got to have a plan, and you got to work the plan.
Mm-hmm. So do you use your Excel, all throughout the year? You're always entering stuff. You're going to these different libraries and said, oh, he died in, Mississippi. So you're going to Mississippi to look at this and that. And then you make your list from there and then sort it based on the location where you're traveling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I keep it by location. And then too, I can copy and paste that into my research log, which is also an Excel spreadsheet. So I've got my research calendar, what I did what my research plan, what I'm going to do that day, the results of what I did that day. And then I can, once I get home, that's when I go ahead and put it into my research calendar for that particular person or their family group sheet. And then enter the data into my legacy software database, cite my sources. And I've gotten everything that I need to cite the source. A lot of people say, do it right there when you're there. I have it so complete and organized and all with me that I don't necessarily need to do it right there, unless, of course, I need to fill in those notes, like, the publisher's name, if that wasn't quite clear on the library card catalog, or whatever the case may be, I fill that in before I go, of course. So, yeah. And so then now, having looked up that book, and I keep looking over there because the picture of that book is over on my other monitor, but having found that historical information on Presho, South Dakota, that will help me prepare to when I do go there.
It's a great tips. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Yep. You're welcome. So this has been awesome. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed each of your August Roundup stories and what you've done. And thank you so much for sharing with me and everyone out there. What I'd like to do is, if there is anything that you mentioned that is a library, like a card catalog or a website, like I'll give the Midwest Genealogy Center link, put that in a note to give to Terry so that she can put it underneath the YouTube video that goes with this chat, okay? Because I know each of you talked about different places, so that would be cool. And with that, if any of you have any questions for us, drop us a comment below or a quick email send it to info@theinDepthGenealogist.com. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, or the other way around. But please get in touch with us. Let us hear from you what you would like us to have on our IDG Chit Chat Live. So with that, I bid you all a fond farewell, and be sure to go in depth with all of your ancestors. Bye-bye.